People who are isolated, living alone. Yeah, absolutely. Those who don't have a voice, the voiceless, the people who aren't listened to. Who are those people, I wonder? And the elderly, the isolated elderly. And there is that frustration about seeing people not sticking to the rules, isn't it? And yeah. And now, yes, Barbara talks about the loss of jobs, which, you know, and with the ending of the furlough scheme, there's going to be a lot more of that. So that's going to be a huge cause for concern. Just feeling helpless. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Not being able to comfort families properly when they've lost a loved one. Yeah. That's been the story of COVID, hasn't it? It's absolutely heartbreaking. Yeah. And not being able to hug, to connect physically with people, it's so hard. Okay. So is that, I think, is everybody done, I think? Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing those frustrations with us all. It's really important. But I want us to think about the other side of things as well now. That other question, what things give me energy and excite me? That's really key and important too. Because our holy frustrations and our concerns alongside the things that energize us and excite us, that's the thing that's going to make us want to get out there and do something about it, and to use the gifts that God has given us as well, because on quite a lot of times the things that energize us and excite us are to do with the gifts that God has given us. If I think about, I'm just thinking about Bill actually at the moment, because he obviously, we know that Bill's an artist. He also loves to canoe. He loves the water as well. But I know that what gives him real energy and excites him is when he takes a young person out and mentors them on the water in his canoe. And I know that he loves doing graffiti art with the people at the hostel, the homeless young people. That's what really, really excites him, when he's able to combine those two things. So let's just think now about the things that energize us and excite us. And again, if you could put on the chat so that we can all see of the things that give us energy and excite us. Okay, thank you. Yeah, there's people joining in church services now online, and which is really exciting to think about where that could go, isn't it? Seeing the little kindnesses people share, random acts of kindness. Gosh, that's wonderful, isn't it? How people have connected in so many different ways during this time. New ways of being church. Yeah, we need to think about new ways of being church, because church is not the same anymore. So how can we do it differently? Connecting with others who want to do something to support those who need it. That's fantastic. Yeah. This is lovely. This is really exciting. Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? People are now spending more time with their family and really enjoying that. not really wanting to go back to the office, and people are seeing how they can work remotely in the foreseeable. Yeah. And being in church again. Yeah. Good. And Ros is saying, thinking of a project, we have to use our churchyard. I'm looking forward to hearing about that. That's brilliant. Weddings. Oh, that's topical. Yes, beautiful. This is great. Anybody else in the last few seconds? Oh, here we go. Yeah, the hunger for hope that we see in people. Lovely. And asking deep questions. This is all great. Oh, virtual craft group with a difference. That's interesting. There's a lot around a desire to help, isn't there? This is really good. Ensure people that know that they're not forgotten. Yeah.
I like that one about releasing time for more important things. That's good.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, sometimes we have to stop doing things. We need to prioritize and stop doing things that are consuming time but not achieving very much. Yeah. Church project. Yeah. This is great. This is exciting, and I'm looking forward to hearing about some of these in a bit more detail later. Great. Yeah. A desire for the church to help the community in the coming months. Knowing, yeah, taking some time out, yes. Christmas is not cancelled. Yes. No, it's not cancelled. We'll do it somehow. Yes. Ways of bringing Christmas to community. Let's think about that. Yeah. Yes. Church adapting. Hoping this dynamism continues into the future. Amen to that. Yeah. This is wonderful stuff, guys. It's really exciting. It's great to hear these reflections. So thanks so much for that. Brilliant. Thank you. I think we'll move on.
Okay. No, thank you very much. As Jackie said, I think we'll come back to some of these points. So let's move on. And we've got a record of those. So we mentioned this term community resilience, and we put up here a definition. Community resilience is a measure of the sustained ability of a community to utilize available resources to respond to, withstand, and recover from adverse situations. And you've just demonstrated that on the chat room, actually. You know, loads of stuff around looking out for people, acts of kindness, dynamism, using churchyards, you know, all of that stuff. And I made a long list of it, is about community resilience. And this term, it may not sound too familiar, but its roots come from disasters. And for many years, I worked with Tear Fund and other agencies in an area called disaster preparedness. And we use this term to help vulnerable communities, particularly in India, to sort of recover from cyclones or floods or earthquakes. And what we worked out was the core to community resilience is not so much the technology, it's the mindset, it's the people who are willing to work together and say, we are not going to be beaten by another cyclone, we're going to build stronger houses, we're going to do sharing resources when these things happen, we're going to have early warning systems, we're going to have quick things that we do when we know it's coming. And so I want to kind of encourage you to think about community resilience, because it's a way in which we say these things are obviously not going to go away sometimes. So we have to find a way of living with it. And the way that we live with it is to have an attitude of working together. So that's what it's about. Its roots are deeply in the disaster field for many years. And now I think it's a great opportunity to start thinking about community resilience in our own communities. So just to give you a little cartoon on that, because we live on cartoons in this, it's not moving. Let's try again. There we are.
No.
So one question we've often asked in our community work is, who is our neighbour? But one of the other challenges is sometimes we don't know who our neighbour is, which gives us a problem for the second question, how is my neighbour? And yet COVID, I think,
sorry, Billy, sorry,
yes.
can I interrupt you? Because I'm not seeing that slide, and I'm wondering if other people aren't either. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I didn't see the community resilience slide either.
Oh, did you not?
Sorry to
Okay.
interrupt.
All right.
No.
Let me bring it up again. Sorry. Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm just going to go back in. You can have a look at each other
Sorry.
now. No, that's no. It's the life of technology.
Yeah.
Let's see what happened. Okay. What are we getting there? Are you seeing it?
Nothing at that's it. That's it. Yeah.
Could everybody just do a simple nod if you can see it? Yeah, a lovely nodding from Ross. Brilliant. Okay, very enthusiastic. Okay, let's go back to the definition. Okay, there it is. I'll read it again. Community resilience is the measure of sustained ability of a community to utilize available resources and to respond to, withstand and recover from adverse situations. That's the definition. And that's what I was talking about. And then this is what I was saying, you know, we all sometimes talk about, well, who is my neighbor? But the deeper question is, how is my neighbor? And I guess under COVID, you know, people started looking out for each other and acts of kindness and looking out for those who are vulnerable. And it kind of leads to the bottom cartoon. So that one about building a culture of care. Well, that's a lot of things you've described in the chat. But if we've got that culture of care, then we can look out for threats and challenges. And this cartoon's taken from some work Jackie and I did on modern slavery in county lines, and particularly some work in Bridgewater in Somerset. And we're realizing more and more that the more we can help communities get to know each other, the better we can protect communities from the threats of trafficking and modern slavery in county lines. So that's part of community resilience. So by getting to know each other, we build it and we can support each other. So there we go. So that's kind of the context, because that helps us think about our next thing, which is a Bible reflection on Elisha and the widow's oil, which we are going to do. So Jackie's going to introduce this, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, we've chosen this Bible passage because it really speaks into some of the things we've been talking about today. So we're going to spend some time looking at this passage. And I'd really hoped to have time to organise somebody to read this for us before we started today, but that hasn't happened. So I just wondered if somebody has access to a Bible or who could read this passage, 2 Kings 4:1-7. Is there
I have a Bible open, can read it for you.
Oh, you wonderful person, Ros. Thank you so much. If you could read this passage, and then when Ros has finished reading the passage, Bill and I will be doing a sort of an up-to-date interview, a TV interview on this story of the widow and the oil. So from now on, and this is the way this is going to work best, if everybody except me and Ros and Bill could mute their microphones, please, and put yourselves on speaker view, if that's at all possible. If you can put yourself on speaker view. And then, Ros, as soon as you've finished reading the passage, if you could also mute, that would be really good.
Okay.
So we'll listen to Ros reading the passage, and then Bill and I will present the passage in a different way.
Yeah, and when Ros stops reading, I will take the share screen off. I mean the image off. Okay. Great.
The wife of one of the prophets appealed to Elisha. "My husband, your servant, has died," she said, "and you know that he was a man who feared the Lord. Now a creditor has come to take away my 2 boys as slaves." Elisha asked her, "How can I help you? Tell me what you have in the house." "Nothing at all," she answered, except a flask of oil. Go out, he said, and borrow the vessels of everyone in the neighborhood. Get as many empty ones as you can. When you come home, shut yourself in with your sons. Then pour out the flask into all the vessels, and as they fill, they set them aside. She left him and shut herself indoors with her sons. They brought her the vessels she filled as she filled them. When they were full, she said to one of her sons, "Bring me another." "There are none left," he replied. Then the flow of oil ceased. She came out and told the man of God, and he said, "Go, sell the oil and pay off your debt, and you and your sons can live on what is left."
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Let me just take that, and I need to go on speaker view.
Okay. So
Okay.
if we all go on speaker view.
I'm on speaker view. Ros, if you, that's great. Wonderful. Okay, so we'll make a start. So welcome to St. Asaph TV. This is the live show on Friday morning, broadcasting from somewhere near Wales, actually quite a long way away, but we're broadcasting on behalf of St. Asaph TV. And in this morning's show, we're going to have an update on Gareth Bell's move back to Britain. Sadly, not to a Welsh team, but to Spurs, which is interesting. But we'll be having some updates on the Red Dragons, the fine Wrexham football team, and what's coming up with them with Telford. We'll be looking at the latest sheep prices and also what's going on in the markets. But first and foremost, we have an exciting story which has come to us today about a widow who faced an enormous challenge. And she's here in the studio. Jackie, welcome. Good to see you. And we really want to hear about your story.
Oh, thank you so much. No, it's lovely to be here. And yeah, I'm so excited to tell you this story.
Great. And
everything has changed for me.
Right, so let's hear about that, because I believe it started with a tragedy and then it was turned around. So do tell our viewers, what was the tragedy and what was the turning point?
Yes, and it was. I mean, a few months ago, my life was so different and so tragic. My husband, I'm a widow, my husband, Obadiah, he died, about 6 months ago now, very sadly. But even, I mean, to add to that though, he left us, me and my sons. We have two lovely boys, Josh and Daniel, and he left us with a terrible debt. We'd had to borrow money way back when things were really, really bad, and we'd had to borrow money, and actually we're still really, really poor, but that money got us through somehow. But then my husband died, as I said, and the man we borrowed money from, he came round and he said, I'm going to take this money. You're going to give me this money back, all of it back. And if you don't give it back, I'm going to take your boys off you, and they're going to come and work for nothing.
That is horrifying. I mean, that is, yeah.
It was absolutely dreadful. I didn't know what to do because I didn't have any money. You know, we were really, really poor. We had no money at all. And so I was at my wit's end. I couldn't sleep. I was crying all the time. The boys didn't know what was wrong with me. And like I said, I couldn't sleep. And then one night I wasn't sleeping, but as I was just lying there, I remembered that my husband was really close to this wonderful man of God, Elisha. I don't know, have you heard of, do you know Elisha?
I think he lives the other side of Conway.
Know?
I think he's quite popular in the Conway area, yeah.
No, he's an amazing man of God. And my husband spent a lot of time with him because he was training to be a priest. And I'd met him a couple of times. I thought, gosh, he is so wise. And and I was lying there and I just thought, well, maybe he could help me. I didn't know how, but I thought maybe he could help me. So I went to see him, and I just poured out all my troubles to him, and he was very kind. He listened to me, and
did he offer a loan or something? I mean, what was his suggestions?
Well, no, he didn't. It was nothing like that, actually. When I'd finished pouring out my troubles to him, he just said to me, okay. He said, what do you have that could be sold? And I said, well, I haven't got anything. You know, we really don't have anything at all. I was just thinking about my bare cupboards and everything. I said, well, actually, I've got nothing. And he said, no. He said, think again. He think, what do you have that could be sold? And I thought, oh, okay. And I remember that I had this tiny little jar of anointing oil, really nice oil, but just a tiny little bit at the bottom of the jar. I said, Elisha, I've got nothing. All I've got is this tiny little jar of oil. And he said to me, you have a tiny little jar of oil. He said, that's a wonderful thing. And I said, no, it isn't. This isn't a wonderful thing. That's all I've got.
Yeah.
And he said, great. He said, this, I know. He said, this is what you must do. He said, you go back to your community, go back and go around all your neighborhood and ask for all the empty jars that your neighbors have got. Empty pots and jars, just ask them to give them to you. And then he said, then collect them all together, and then you and your boys get together and pour the oil in the jars. And I thought, and obviously that makes no sense whatsoever, does it?
Crazy.
So I thought, this is just crazy. And I was starting to get a bit angry, but I thought, no, my husband trusted this man. So I thought, I'm going to trust him too.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back home and I said, Josh, Daniel, come on, we're going to go around the houses and ask for their empty jars. And that's what we did. We went around the whole neighborhood. And, and I think, the neighbors thought I was bonkers, but they were very kind and they helped me and they gave me as many jars as they had.
A bit like a sort of recycling project they probably thought it was, yeah.
Well, maybe that's what they thought it was, I don't know. But we went back into the house and I did what Elisha said and I shut the door and we had this whole house full of jars. And I said to the boys, okay, here we go. And I got my little jar of oil and I thought, well, this isn't going to take long. So I started to pour the oil into one of the bigger jars. But it did take long. It just kept pouring, and the oil just kept pouring and pouring and pouring. And this jar, the big jar, was full of oil. And I said, Josh, get me another one. And I got another jar and I started pouring, and it just filled up and filled up and filled up, and I just kept going. And I went round all the jars. It took forever, and the house was starting to smell amazing. But the oil just kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. And it was just amazing. The boys were going crazy, as you can imagine. And then, this is the best bit. Eventually, we got to the last jar, the last empty jar. And I started pouring the oil in the jar. And as soon as that jar was full, my little jar of oil, it ran out.
Wow.
There was no oil left. But there we were. Me and Josh and Daniel with this house full of oil, and this is good stuff. This is really good anointing oil, and I knew this was going to bring in a lot of money. So of course we took the oil to market, and I have paid off my debts.
Wonderful.
And we've still got a load of an income coming in from all this oil to sell. And the man came round and I paid him off, and I could see he was really surprised, but he's completely out of our lives forever. And my boys can stay with me, until they obviously go and get married.
Yeah.
So it's just the most amazing story. I'm so happy to share it with you. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, that's a wonderful story, and I'm sure our viewers have really valued seeing that. And just to say that next week we're going to have the widow from Nain joining us on the Friday morning program. But thank you, Jackie. That's great. And before the break, we will be going over to the weather station to hear about that. We'll hear the football updates. And also a special offer on the program, bulbs. That's what we're going to be growing in the spring. So we're going to have lots of daffodil special offers coming on the program. But thank you very much for joining us, and back to the main thing with Bill and Jackie. Thank you. Right. That's that. Let's go. If we go, I'll try and get myself back in the right place. There we are. Right. Good. So that was a dramatized version of Elisha and the Widow. So we've got some questions for you to look at. Someone started sharing a screen. Right. Okay.
Oh,
How did that happen? Who's Kate?
no, what's happened now?
I don't know.
That's not the part. Okay. We're viewing Kate's screen now.
I don't know who Kate is. Right, hang on. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm just, hang on, we'll get that right. Okay. I think Kate's left the area where she was. Right, okay.
Hey.
Right, we're back there. So, let's try the world. Oh gosh, we've done that. Right, okay. So I'm going to put you shortly into breakout rooms, and I very much hope I can send you these questions on the chat feature shortly. But just in case they don't make it to you for some reason, there are three main questions. But generally, we'd love you to reflect on this miracle and discuss the role of the community of this miracle and any other thoughts around that. And then maybe think about what are some of the adverse situations going on at the moment in our communities, along with the challenges of COVID-19. So we also have challenges before there was COVID and during COVID, so it's not just COVID. But then also, as you started to reflect in the chat room earlier, what role can the church play in responding to these situations in a way that builds community? So, just like we are talking about resilience, it's about building community, and some of you have shared those things. So we'd just love you to reflect on this passage, think about that adverse situation. What do we have as adverse situations? But then just as she collected the jars and the miracle happened, how can the church play a role in doing the same kind of thing? And again, it's interesting because a key theme to this is about they're using their own resources. They weren't applying for grants or all sorts of money or a loan. It was just using what they had is a really interesting point in that. So I'm going to put you in breakout rooms and just invite you to go to those for about, I think, is it Jackie, about 10, 15 minutes, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what you have to do when this comes up on your screen, you just have to join it. You've probably done this. So I'm going to put you in 3 rooms. So that's 5 in each room. And we'll see you back in about 10, 15 minutes. So have a really good discussion, enjoy talking, and we'll see you in a bit, and I'll send the questions. Okay, here you go. So you just need to join, and Jackie and I won't join. Okay, just right. So you can now join. So breakout room 1, 2, and 3. Just wait for a few more people to come back. It's quite exciting seeing people appear. Great. Wonderful. I think we are more or less all back, which is wonderful. Great. Okay, so we're going to take the feedback now. So what we're going to do, we're going to put up a whiteboard and Jackie is going to write on that. So, and I'll ask each group in turn to share something back. If one group before you has already shared the same point, then don't sort of say it again, try and find a new point that hasn't been shared. So whiteboard is in position, it's looking good. So let's start with group 3. We'll start backwards or forwards. So group 3, anybody in group 3 want to share something around those questions, the theme of something around the role of the community, any thoughts around that in that miracle?
Well, we group 3.
I think we were, Dom, yeah.
Okay,
I
sorry.
just shared something that Jane.
Yeah, go on.
Jane mentioned right at the very end of our session, and of Mother Teresa's words about doing small things with great love, and actually everyone doing those small things, bringing one jar, suddenly enormous things happen, and we had a few examples from the group, but that
That's
Lovely.
wonderful. I really like that.
Lovely.
Could somebody else share an example to go with that from that group? Who was in Dominic's group who could just share quickly an example? That'd be really interesting. You need to unmute and talk. Alison.
Something that we mentioned was possibly just keeping in touch with a few people, not trying to phone everybody in church every week, but sharing it amongst everyone so that perhaps each person looked after 3 and those 3 looked after another 3, so that the whole community was involved and we weren't asking too much of any one person.
Yeah, that's great. Excellent. Let's stay with this role of the church and community. Another group, any other things to add to that? Group 2 or 1? I don't remember who's in group 2. And if you can't remember which group, and you've got something on your heart, just share it. We won't be too rigid about group numbers, but it was just a guide. Any thoughts?
I think our group said sort of something quite similar. It was just they gave what they could with a generous heart, because it must have been quite embarrassing having to go and ask people for help, but people didn't say no, and they gave with a generous heart.
So there's something about, thanks Sarah, something about the quality, isn't it? It's not just giving, but it's the way in which it's giving that's coming through. Anybody have anything else slightly different or add to that? Anything? Because you're all thumbnails, I can't quite see everybody, so I have to keep going up and down. But so just unmute and give us a thought. Okay, Roz has put in the chat room, encouraging people, helping them to get involved. That's a really nice point. So getting people, helping people get involved, because it gives people value, isn't it? It's a way, volunteering is a wonderful way of helping people feel valued and useful. Yeah, yeah. Any other, I mean, do feel free to use the chat room if that's easier for you in that way.
Sorry to speak again, but I thought this was quite an interesting insight that I shared and others shared around, that there's the fascinating thing in that miracle that although in some ways the work is entirely God's, you know, God is doing this, and yet it wouldn't have happened if the community hadn't got involved. And we talked about actually that sort of blurring of lines between the church or whatever and the community, which we've seen a bit at the moment with, you know, projects to help people and to get support to people. And actually seeing those lines dissolve a little bit because everything is under God's authority, and so is all. There's no clear division.
Yeah, that's a really, really lovely point, actually. And I think, in one sense, that's something that, you know, is the ideal. There shouldn't be a sort of a clear define. We're looking for more blurred lines, so there's a fusion between the two, which is really great. Okay. Any other points from
I was just going to say, if am I okay to speak?
Yes,
Yeah.
no, you're totally okay, Jane.
Yes. Okay. I was just saying that in one of my work in the churchyard on a Tuesday morning, and doing you know, cutting down the hedges and all the jobs that need doing, kind of thing. And they over the lockdown, they've been inviting other people to come and join them to do various bits and pieces. And now they're going to carry on this group of this boys club of, you know, they're all in their 80s,
Right.
and they're going to carry on doing that, but inviting other people to come and join them, and then just meeting on a Tuesday morning, and then hopefully, you know, when they can go in church and have a cup of tea legally, they can carry on just meeting together. But it's encouraging. I see in one of my churches, I seem to have a lot of older widowers, and so they're involving them to bring them along. And because blokes like to have a job, they like to do things, generally speaking, being very general there, but they like to have something to do rather than just sit and chat like women would. So it's been perfect for them that they've been doing that and inviting their friends to come along and help to do whatever it is, even if they're not church people.
Mm.
So it's just something very small, but it's just got, you know, it's just setting its roots down in lockdown, really.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's really, really, really good. That's lovely. I love this 8-year-old aged boys club. That sounds great. It's but you're absolutely right about doing things is a key way of doing that, and it's sort of non-directive, so people have some good chats. Right, we've got time for one more comment. We've got space for one more. Any more thoughts? Okay, right.
Oh no, he's back. Okay.
Okay, Heather, did you want to say
He's back.
something?
Me, sorry.
Did you want to say something? I wasn't sure if you were about to speak or not.
No, I was. Never mind. Well, what I was thinking about actually is this: that the gardening thing seems a brilliant idea, and there are 2 clerics in this diocese I know who are into gardening. I've had a discussion with them already about something else. So there might be some resources in the diocese to enable this to happen in a bit of a constructive way, because growing things outdoors is brilliant, except that sometimes it really doesn't work. If you saw the spring onions I tried to grow this year, you'll see what I mean. If you took the outside skin off, there wouldn't be anything left, basically. So I know there's definitely more to it than that, but just having a group of people to enable could be an idea.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're going to, on that spirit, we're going to move on. So we'll close the whiteboard. Really good things there. And we're just going to review a couple of projects. So Jack, do you want to? Yeah, great. So let me just share something. And so really helpful having those contributions. So what we thought we'd do, think about this thing of resilience a bit more. Try and get this to move. Okay, we've done that bit. Yeah, okay. So we had a lovely chat with Sarah some months ago, and we heard about 3 little projects, and there may be more, must be a lot more. But one project was about providing fresh food, a fresh food box to vulnerable families. They pay a small contribution and they get a regular supply of fresh fruit. The other project was cream teas being supplied on a regular basis to isolated elderly people. I think that was right. And the other one was about churches becoming a sort of distribution point for PPE. And what was interesting when we were talking with Sarah was kind of how these have been had a sort of little bit of a ripple effect going beyond those, not just doing that, it led to other things. And I just wondered if anybody had an example that did a similar thing, that they provided something, so like a sort of a welfare situation, but it led to other more deeper things. Do you have any examples of those at all? A bit like what I just described, these led, we'll go on to what they led to, but anything that had a bit of what we would call a ripple effect. Anybody got any examples of that?
I've got one.
Yeah, someone? Sorry, I can't see who it is. But...
Can I break on?
Is that Barbara? Yeah, I can see you now. Yeah, go for it, Barbara.
Well, before lockdown, in the church, we started up. I started up a craft group for the difference, sort of around Bible reflections and doing the craft group. But because of the being isolated during lockdown, I thought, is there some way we can carry it on in lockdown? So we did a virtual craft group where I did packs of crafts, but based on a reflection. So for example, I did a reflection on the butterfly, and then they made butterfly cards. And I started off with about 5 or 6 people, and I've got a waiting list of about 17 or 18 people wanting to join this group. Some are not church members.
Sure.
And in our first service on a couple of Sundays ago, these people came to church who have never been to church before, but because of the meeting together in the craft group, they've felt confident to come. Right. So it's growing.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So that's a good example, isn't it? So it started something on virtual and non-church church people joined, but also I guess that sense of community virtually that was
Yeah.
built through that.
People felt isolated and they wanted
Yeah.
to do something practical together. And
Yeah.
it's just, we have a reflection, but we talk about that, and then obviously they're creative as well. So it's taken their mind off what's going on. Big world out there.
Yeah, fantastic. That's really good. So I thought I'd just show you something just to add to this a bit more is, so the question is, how can we build on some of the examples that have been mentioned in the way that use our passion and energy and skills that builds community? So, you know, we heard from Barbara there about the craft group and leading to a service and other things. And I suppose the question would be, which we'll do in a minute, is how can we build on that craft group? Or how can we build on the vegetable supply to families, vulnerable families, or the cream teas, or the PPE? What more could we do? Because these are like, if you like, entry points. And I love one of the quotes at the beginning, I think, Gregor said it, you know, about the sort of acts of love and kindness with loads and loads of love. So these have started in that way, but what more could we add? And ultimately, we're trying to build that resilience, aren't we? Because we don't know how long COVID's going to happen for, or maybe we'll face other things. So what I like to do is to put you into breakout rooms for about probably a little bit more than 5 minutes and have a discussion about how we can add value to either one of these, the food, the cream teas, or the PPE, or Barbara's project, or one that you've thought of. So I just want you to go and have a chat and think about how can you add more to it, build on it, all right? Are we all together? A nod if you understand what I'm saying. Yep, there's a nod. Okay, good. Right, you're going to go into breakout rooms, so you have to join the room and then you'll come back. So discuss how can we add things to these. Right, you're in the same rooms. Welcome back, everybody. Do you know, we had a funny thought. We didn't see you for quite a long time. I thought, oh my gosh, I've lost the entire group somewhere in outer space. So it was quite exciting to get everybody back. It was great. Good. So let's, anybody can just share. We won't do group by group, but any examples, how can we add value to some of the things we're doing or about to do? How can we build on that? Any thoughts coming up from Henry there? Put your hand up in the air if you want to say something. That would be great. Okay. Gregor, do you want to say something?
Yeah, in our group home, we were discussing how there's a church yard there into a community garden, and how that's a good way of not only adding value to the community, but also brings the community together.
Great. So that's a community garden.
Where I'm.
Okay, I didn't catch all that. It's slightly breaking up, but hopefully Jackie caught most of that. Thanks, Gregor.
Sorry, Roz, what was that?
He was not at Llangollen, but he also talked about a village hall looking around at different projects. And I think this is just looking at your own churches and how that can be involved in using the community. And our idea for the garden was that we're in the center of the village, and there's no sort of green space for people to go and sit and reflect. And that was where we're beginning to work on it, still very much in the embryo stage.
Great, that's really good. That's a community space. Another one? Dominic, yeah.
Yes, I mean, as I said to people, this is really nothing to do with me, but I'm about to move to Holywell, and they've been doing this amazing project, a sort of 2-pound food club, they call it. So it's not charity, and that's quite important. People that use it, but people come and they receive food. And one of the questions that I put to the people who are really looking after it is, how do we build something that lasts, but also the things that people are really valuing about it is not the physical food, but actually the spiritual and emotional support of talking to people, sharing their problems. And actually it's fascinating that rippling that we talked about, it started with one of the church wardens noticing a real need. People aren't able to get food bank vouchers. What are we going to do about it? But the result has been a building of community and the meeting of spiritual needs, which has been really exciting.
That's wonderful.
That's a really good example. Thank you. Any other ones to build on that, or other ones? Jane, I think you, yes, thank you, Jane. Go for it.
Jane.
Yeah, sorry, it's just something that I'm part of. It's not just me. Of part of the new hygiene hampers that we're doing with the COAL, and it is sort of like an add-on from the food bank, but this was sort of aimed specifically at young carers or single women come out of refuges or elderly people on their own who may not have the money to spend. They might have the money for food, but they might not have the money for the extra things. So the washing powder or the sanitary products or the shampoo and bubble bath and all that kind of thing. So that's something that's happening over in Towin that's evolved really from the food bank as a separate need, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good example of, you know, the entry point, it builds onto something else. Yeah, and I think Sarah wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was hoping Barbara was going to say it, but I'm going to say it for her anyway. So in our group, Barbara and Sylvia were chatting and realised that they actually are geographically relatively close to each other, so they're going to start working together. Barbara's got that wonderful craft group, Sylvia's got a reflection space, but also to see if there's a way that they can support each other and maybe to grow it together. So yeah, because I mean what Barbara's doing is amazing, but it's also a lot to do for one person, and there's a lot more people that want to join in, so it'd be good if there's more people involved. It would really help.
Great.
I think the initial aim of it was because there was obviously so many people feeling isolated and not able to talk, you know, and it was bringing that spiritual element into it, and you know, obviously the craft bit was useful, but it was the spiritual and the isolation and the and talking about our fears together. So you know, I didn't want to really home in on the craft bit, but it was the other side as well.
That's really, really fantastic. Just talking about fears, I mean, that's so powerful. Thank you.
This is a theme that's coming through. No, sorry, I'm just loving this theme that's coming through, that you know, the physical needs are one thing, but the at the same time are clearly that's what's needed. That's what people are really needing.
I think what I found in our group as well was that people felt embarrassed about saying that they were feeling anxious and upset or whatever, because we should be handing it over to God to feel frightened. You know, yes, we need to bring it to Him as well, but it's sharing it together.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that in that group.
That's a lovely point you just made, Barbara, actually. Yeah, it's sort of, God welcomes our lamenting as well, doesn't He?
He does, yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Any other last closing thoughts on this? Wonderful. Okay, well,
this is all bigger than
go, Heather.
Sorry.
No.
This is all bigger than just this little group, really, isn't it? It occurs to me that perhaps we could start to look across the diocese to see who else we could network with about gardening or creative crafts. That might mean that we could make it a thing that is not just for the people who are in this group and our contacts, but wider than that. So maybe a bit of publicity in Stars, I think, could be a good thing. Just an idea. Get a bit more structure around it first. But anyway, that's a suggestion.
Great. Okay, so lots of really good examples there. And I just want to share last couple of slides before we end. So I'm just going to share a slide. So yeah, so this is what we were talking about. How do we add more? And we had some really, really good examples about that. And we will be sending these slides out so you have a reference of them. But just one thing. So we had great conversations with Sarah Wheat about these different projects. And I guess what a lot of you are saying, whatever the project is, there's sort of 3 stages. There's a response. So somebody in the church warden or a member of the church or community comes to church and they identify a need, a kind of welfare need of some sort. And there's a transition phase where there's a kind of listening to what's going on. And just as Barbara was showing, people are sharing their fears. And as they do, it builds trust. And as it builds trust, you can identify other needs. So make sure they're muted. And yeah, okay. And as we identify those other needs, we actually start to address some community issues. So maybe around, underlying needs, maybe there's mental health issues, we can provide support there. Or there's about building ownership about local solutions. So we can look at sort of, job creation or some kind of income support. Or it's about opportunities to use our own resources creatively, just as we were hearing about the woman, Elisha and the widow, all those jars, and that was part of using her resources and the community's resources. So this is a fantastic opportunity to do some community transformation with what we've got and addressing some underlying issues. And I guess what COVID has done is expose a lot more vulnerabilities that existed in our communities, but we have a great window of opportunity to start looking at them. But if we think about, if we just do one small thing in lots of love, that's great, but also it's a window to address some other things, because we can do that once we build trust and people feel safe to share their concerns. So that's kind of what we wanted to get over in this ripple effect, and that's how we build resilience in our communities. So I'm just going to hand over to Jackie for the last bit. Jack.
Yeah, we just wanted to finish with some scripture and a prayer for us all, really. And this is from Acts, of course, the early church, which is an inspiration for us, I think. All the believers were one in heart and mind. No one claimed that any of their possessions was their own, but they shared everything they had. And God's grace was so powerfully at work in them all that there was no needy persons among them. That's a wonderful thing to think about. It feels a bit of an impossible dream, but as we say, if we do the little we can for each other, who knows what might happen. So that's our piece of scripture. And if we just finish with this prayer. Can't see it now.
Jack, if you put your cursor on the top bar, you can move it down, if you're with me. If you put the cursor on the black top bit, you can, yeah.
Okay, so I would ask us to pray this together, but I know on Zoom that's going to be chaos. So I'll just read this prayer for us. God, our Maker, we praise you for the gift of community. Thank you for the communities in which we work and live. Thank you for the community that is your body, the church. Fill us with your spirit today so that as one we reflect your light and love to each other and the world. In Christ we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Great, thank you, Jackie. So, there's one last slide. I just only remembered. Sorry, we go back. Yeah, there's one last slide, which is. So just to say, really great being with you all. And but next we're going to be looking at module 3 on the 30th of September. And that's being church community in Wales. And we're looking at reaching out for the most vulnerable and marginalised. How do we do that? So thank you so much for joining us. I'll just stop sharing so we can say goodbye to each other. But any questions or thoughts, we can take that now as well. But if you need to move off to other things, that's fine. But thank you, really great participation. What we'll do now, we'll write up some of the things you've said and we'll put those into the next module to recap, and we'll make the PowerPoints available to you after this. So thank you. So go if you want to go, if you want to ask anything or chat, that's also, we're here for that. So thank you very much, everybody. Goodbye.